You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
So welcome, listeners. You have made it to the right place. This is Making Data Simple. Only the really smart, attractive people listen to this podcast. So if you're not one of those folks, I guess you can disconnect now. Otherwise, we're going to continue, and we're going to continue on with the beautiful people. And speaking of beautiful people, I guess, I don't know, Greg, are you one of them? Greg Bonnette is here for a podcast interview. Hi, Greg.
Hi, how you doing, Al? Thanks for having me. That's up for debate.
You've got to be one of those people, or we wouldn't have you on. Everybody's beautiful that comes on here. No, I'm just having fun. So look, you're the VP of Data and Analytics Strategy with Ironside. You're also the CDO and CTO at that company. I'll give you a quick lead in, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. You've been at Ironside, to my understanding, like 13 years in several different roles, including principal consultant, VP of product management. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but is there anybody else doing anything over there? Because if you've got CDO, CTO, analytics strategy, hell, you got the whole C-suite right there. I'm talking to him, am I not?
Yeah, I think that's a bit of an inflated definition of my role there, but yeah, it's been a 13-year journey working in consulting and working in data and analytics. I've done a lot of different things in the space. Today, or more often these days, I spend most of my time, working directly with clients and really trying to understand the broader data and analytics landscape in terms of technology and methodology. I would say I'm not a CTO or CDO for Ironside per se, but I do play that role on a part-time basis when I work with my clients. So think of kind of a part-time CDO or advisor in a client-facing capacity. And then kind of internally facing, really, it is a lot of understanding what the new trends are in the marketplace, new methods, staying up on the R&D, and then informing our different practice areas and our different delivery teams and architecture teams as to what those are and how we can kind of bring those different methods to bear to solve for our clients' problems.
So what I know of Ironside is that you're in the business to make drive better business outcomes. And I know, at least I think, and you guys, or you can correct me, I know that you're organized around 6 pillars: that's strategy, governance, architecture, data, analytics, and skills. But how do you describe Ironside?
Yeah, Ironside is I would describe Ironside as a business problem-solving company. We are hyper fixated on outcomes for our clients, delivering value, understanding what their critical business issues are, and then trying to help understand and map how they could use their data and use different analytical techniques to help achieve those outcomes. So that's fundamentally our mission. We do use a lot of really cool tech. We have a lot of really smart people. And we bring all that together and we help and implement really smart process as part of that. But ultimately, we are totally aware that what we're doing and the technology and everything is a means to an end. And that is the outcome, the positive outcome for that business.
So is this consultancy? Is it driving specific solutions through consultancy? Do you build any products?
We don't build any, off-the-shelf products. We don't have any software products in a traditional sense, like someone would think from buying from a vendor. But what we do is we're a solution provider. So we partner with really smart companies like IBM. We integrate technologies, and then we build business applications on top of those platforms. So that's how we execute. And then kind of leading that in, we also help devise strategy. So we'll have a customer typically might raise a hand and say, these are my business objectives. These are the challenges that we face as a business in our marketplace, or what our goals are. How can we get there? How should we use our data? How should we organize our people? Who should we hire? How should we design process and govern our information? And we help them devise a strategy to do that. And then also an executable roadmap that's sequenced in the proper order to deliver value at a pace that's reasonable and that will get them to the goal as quickly as possible.
So I like the plug for IBM. That's always good. Appreciate that. And you're out of the Boston area, is that right?
That's correct. Yep. We're based out of
You're not
Lexington.
a freaking Pats fan, are you? You're not a Pats fan, are you?
I always like to think about that in terms of, so I grew up in the bad times of the Patriots. So I know the good and the bad. And I also am not delusional to the fact that the good can't last forever. So
So that's a carefully worded way to say, hell yes, I am. That's what I heard. I do remember the bad times, but now the good times, I can't remember the bad times because every year you guys are winning something. So, geez, I don't know. And I'm a Chiefs fan, so you didn't help.
Oh, man.
I mean, it's killing me.
That was an amazing game, though. Probably one of my favorite games of the season, or in a few seasons. That was excellent. You guys have a very bright future there. So,
I actually think that was the Super Bowl, right? I was at that game.
Oh, wow.
But painful, but it was a great game. It's just that we didn't get the flip, but that's okay. That happens. So you again, you are the vice president of data analytics strategy. Now you are not, or you're not the chief data officer or chief technology officer.
I would say, if you're thinking semantically, I play a CTO role for the organization. So I report directly to our CEO, and I provide insight and advice to our COO and CFO and CMO and other CHRO across the organization as it pertains to everything from methodology to talent to how we go to market, what markets we should play in, what industries we should develop expertise in, what technologies we should develop skills around, and that sort of thing. So I provide strategic advice to the internal consulting organization, and then I also am very client-facing in my role.
So that was my next question. So when we're talking strategy here, maybe you kind of answered it. Is this strategy internally or strategy externally? And in other words, helping clients adopt a strategy that maybe, I don't know, correlates with the strategy you guys are driving, or is it both? I mean, are you doing a little bit of everything there?
They're often one and the same. If we're going to organize our team to effectively deliver for our clients, we have a point of view and a position and a belief that what we're doing is what's good for us is good for our clients, or vice versa. So oftentimes it's the same. If we believe, for instance, we have a belief, and it's not necessarily novel, but we have a belief that data science and machine learning and advanced analytics is how organizations will win and how they will compete in their marketplaces. And we believe that that's how many organizations will move the needle the fastest. And we believe that organizations need to provide access to these capabilities to more and more people within their companies and their organizations. So, we're structuring our people to be able to do that. And also we're enabling our clients to be able to do that on their own as well.
Did I hit it right when I talked about the 6 pillars that you're aligned under: strategy, governance, architecture, data, analytics, and skills? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's fairly correct. That's kind of how we think about the world of data and analytics. So, cutting across those different concepts.
There's got to be a vision / strategy that you rally behind today. Like, for example, for IBM, for us, for data and AI, it's the ladder to AI. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but essentially going from collect, organize, analyze, infuse, and infuse machine learning. Can you characterize your strategy? I mean, the theme that you stick with, I presume it can be tailored to any customer or business need and the problem, as you spoke of, that you're trying to solve. But having said that, what is your overriding strategy?
So we start with, we've developed a proprietary industry benchmark and a maturity model around data and analytics that does pull an organization across those 6 pillars. And our entire strategy, practice, and offerings kind of built around those 6 concepts as well. So we believe a healthy approach to managing data and doing analytics and producing decision support and optimizing business process ultimately rests upon those six pillars, those six foundational pillars. Strategy being, you have a business strategy. You understand how you want to measure your business strategy and performance. You understand how that translates to the data you need to collect and the insight you need to produce. Governance meaning both process governance as well as data governance, and the tight interconnection between those things. Those could be business processes, how you execute your core operational processes and the quality in which you do so. The quality and how you define your data and how you manage and assure that the data is what you define it to be in terms of data governance. And then also the process governance around data and analytics in general. So how you generate insight, how you manage things, how you deploy predictive models and how you manage those in production, and all those nuances and all the kind of process that is kind of meta process to data and analytics is in that bucket as well. Architecture being the technology and the infrastructure and your platforms. And, predominantly we're talking about elastic architectures and cloud architectures these days. Data in terms of, how you manage and capture and organize your data. Analytics being how you activate that data, the different methods and capabilities you use to do that, be it just classic descriptive statistics or perhaps, something more advanced like deep learning, machine learning, anything that anyone's really kind of rolling into this AI bucket these days. And then, of course, skills. We are, people-driven organization. Most companies are. It's really important that we have the right skills and the right reconfigurable and flexible skill set to be adaptive and to execute and to use these technologies and apply these techniques.
Nice. I mean, so maybe this is an overused buzzword or industry term, but I mean, does that just put you in the business to drive digital transformations for the clients that are, seeking to transform their business? Is that a good characterization or no? I mean, in other words, are you in the business of digital transformation?
You could say that. My big challenge there with a lot of these terms is the subjective nature of everything. I think digital transformation means so many different things to different people.
I agree.
I would invite you to define it, and I might be able to. What does that mean to you, Al? And I can
digital transformation.
Yeah.
So, essentially, what digital transformation means to me is being able to be a data-driven business. And essentially what we call it, I may butcher this, but, I tried to align it in the maturity curve in terms of, I try to align it in terms of the maturity curve from going operational to developing new business models that are customer experience driven and data driven. And when you're able to do that, you're able to drive outcomes based on that data, new outcomes that, you didn't even anticipate. Usually it's predicated on artificial intelligence or machine learning, I should say. I think AI can be, I don't want to get into another definition with AI, but
I was going to ask you that next. So
yes, I'm sure you. So, I mean, it's driving outcomes based on data. And then what I often see within digital transformations is then, a lot of companies head towards subscription. That's where cloud becomes very valuable too, because then you're able to drive outcomes on the client experience. You know what I mean? So the client rewards you with their dollars based on the client value you provide. I don't know if that's a good definition, but that's my definition.
Based on the definition you provided, I would say, we're at the center of that definition of digital transformation. I work with organizations every day that are kind of making that move towards knowing their customer better, better personalization of a customer experience. And a lot of that falls back down on, matching problems, allocation problems, sorting problems, and we're using machine learning to solve for those. And we're using those different methods to provide better decision support to customers or better decision support to people that interact with customers, or in some cases to machines that interact with customers on our behalf.
So that was one question I had. I didn't see AI in there or machine learning. I presume that's under the analytics pillar.
Yeah. So we would put AI or ML under analytics. And again, that's just, the semantics of our world is a bit Everything is a bit subjective. So it's kind of funny. Every time I talk to a new client or anyone I'm having a conversation with in industry, we almost have to stop and say, okay, well, what do you call this? And, come up with our dictionary for the next, the remainder of the conversation. And
I know.
yeah, for us, analytics encompasses AI, machine learning, classic descriptive statistics and counting things and whatnot. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. So you talk about a proprietary benchmark. Now, is this, I'm thinking, a questionnaire for a client to figure out where they are in any one of those buckets, or what I would call that digital transformation, or I would call the maturity curve, or am I completely getting this wrong?
Oh, no, you're spot on. That's exactly it. So we've developed a survey product. There's a version of that survey on our website. If you go to ironsidegroup.com and search maturity benchmark or data and analytics maturity in the search bar, you should pop over to that survey. That's a kind of a general implementation. What we use with our clients directly is a little bit more tailored to their specific industry or the context. But fundamentally, there's normative data there that we've collected working with hundreds of clients over the last 20 years that we've used to kind of form our opinions and develop that benchmark. And that's a tool we provide to our clients to use on a continual basis. So we'll measure where they're at and understand the sentiment of the organization, maybe when we kick off a data and analytics strategy engagement. And then we'll provide that service on an ongoing basis and give them the toolkit to re-administer that and measure progress towards their goals over time.
So does that mean when you have this benchmark, obviously by the sheer definition of a benchmark, speaking of definition, it will kind of tell you where you are in the business, what opportunities you have, and it kind of outlines here's where you're at, here's where the possibilities of where you could be, and then you draw up a solution or a problem-solving plan?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is contextual. If your score in your analytic maturity is, could be between a 1 and a 5, and you're ranking yourself a 2, but really to be successful and achieve your business strategy, you only need to get to a 4 based on, what we qualitatively define that to be and what the examples of that are. Then we'll put together a roadmap and a plan to get you to a 4. It's all about, being fit for purpose and being prescriptive. And I think that's what's unique to our approach is we don't think everybody needs to be maxed out to 5s everywhere if their problems don't necessitate that.
So that's interesting. And all anybody listening would have to do, can they go out there? Is it free to go through this?
Absolutely.
Or to do this survey?
Yep, yeah. Absolutely free. The way we have it set it up is you can share with your colleagues at your company, and the more people that answer the survey from your company based on your email address, actually, it will aggregate those results up, and so you can see what you said versus what in aggregate your peers are saying. So it's a nice little tool, and it's a good sample of what it would look like to kind of engage with us around those concepts.
That makes sense. But it sounds like that it's better, or it's better suited if you have multiple, I don't know, maybe personas and or just multiple individuals or leaders in your organization that go out there and do the survey, so you can put that together, aggregate, and determine really where they are versus a one-sided view.
Absolutely. And I love that you use the term personas. We have a healthy dose of design thinking built into this process. So we've developed a persona map for knowledge workers. That's kind of part of this process. And those are people in different roles like data scientist or data engineer or data analyst or business user or decision maker or consumer. These different roles that people play in how they interact with data. And they're all going to have varying opinions about what it's like to work with data at your organization. So it's important that you hear from that cross-section so that you have a really true representation of what the challenges are. Because oftentimes what we see, the executive or the decision maker at an organization may feel like he or she has access to all the information that they need, and they don't realize the monumental effort that it takes to create that situation or create that environment. So it's always kind of that classic analogy of the duck on the water, calm above the water, paddling furiously beneath. So that's where we're getting a cross-sectional view of what the sentiment is in the organization is important, because then we kind of get to the real problems.
This benchmark is interesting. I'm going to have to go out and check it out. What we do, or what my model has been, is what we call a maturity curve, and kind of what I was referring to previously when I semi-butchered the digital definition. But essentially, it's going from left to right. And follow me here, because I got a question for you. On the very left side, if there's two quadrants, the two quadrants are about spending money to save money. And then there's two quadrants on the right side, which is spending money to make money. On the left side, you start out with operations, back office data stores, that kind of thing. And then you move to the second quadrant, which is about warehousing. This is where companies say, look, I want to be able to get my sales trends, my production yields. And so then they're thinking data marts, they're thinking warehousing, they may be thinking appliance, but the opportunities there are data lake or Hadoop, or maybe, all opportunities are the cloud. Those are the first two quadrants. Then you move into what I would call self-serve analytics, which is the third quadrant, which is really, again, this is where magic starts to happen. Personas come in, application developer, data science. You're democratizing access to the data. And then governance comes in, and you've got to make sure that, look, if you're going to democratize the data, you got to be able to protect it based on persona. And then people are starting to explore machine learning, Spark, different things like that. Then it goes into the fourth quarter when you're able to build off those models. You're taking the machine learning models that you have, and then you're really putting everything together, and new business models arrive. And that's where I say the digital transformation really takes shape, and because you're data driven now, and you're driving your business based on client experience outcomes. Those are the four quadrants as I see them. Is that how, it looks like you've got the 6 areas that are very much aligned with that, including governance, et cetera. Do you see that, or anything you would edit?
No, I think it's a very similar concept. I think what's important, or what we found to be important in our experiences, is that it's not necessarily always a linear journey, and not everybody has the same path. So we tailor the approach to understand, we try and get down to use cases. Part of this strategy is also developing a roadmap and identifying the specific business use cases. These are real business problems or questions in plain English, where, we're going to use analytics to provide better decision support. And we're going to optimize a business process. More oftentimes than not, it's a business process optimization exercise, or business process invention exercise if we're creating a new product or a new experience or entering a new market with this new decision support or data product, what have you. So, I always take, for example, work with a number of insurance companies, and insurance companies have been doing a great job of building models for decades and decades and decades. I would say actuaries may be the original data scientists in a corporate context. So they may be really, really strong in one area, and maybe doing machine learning as well for some more advanced, underwriting or risk identification models on top of their standard, GLMs and some of the, regulated ratings models that they have. But that doesn't mean that marketing has a 360-degree view of the customer, or has self-service access to the information, or has any of those capabilities themselves to understand marketing effectiveness or cross-sell affinity, et cetera. So just because you might have achieved a state of maturity, or you might have leapfrogged, if we're looking at things in a linear model in one part of your business, it doesn't mean that you're universally there. And so that's why we take kind of a bit of a fit-for-purpose approach.
Well, this tailors directly into my next question, and why I gave you that big diatribe, and that is, where do you think most clients are today in your experience with, your workings and the problems that you are solving?
I would, by and large, most clients today are, still trying to get a handle on organizing their data. And some of them, if you're a kind of a mature business or a larger enterprise, you've got an enterprise data warehouse, and that may be working for you in some contexts, or if you're a bit more progressive, maybe you've gone down a path to building more of a data platform or a data lake, as some have called it. And those companies have experienced some mixed results with that as well. But by and large, if I had to pick an average of where across all industries people are, it's really just trying to manage data and get basic KPIs and descriptive statistics about their business. And that would summarize kind of the bulk of my client experiences. And then now, obviously, people are trying to push the envelope and really progress the maturity rapidly right now. And what's really interesting about what's happening with AI and with data science is it is drawing attention to some of the major fundamental issues around managing data. And it's doing so in a really great context, I would say. So, for example, when I started this line of work, when I started in consulting, almost 15 years ago, we were still talking about the data warehouse as the thing, or the BI platform as the thing. Like that was people were focused on implementing the thing and not the reason for implementing the thing. And I would say we did the same thing again as an industry at large with Hadoop, 10 years ago, when, and that's just kind of the natural hype cycle of things. As something comes out, a new concept, and people just want to implement that concept or technology without really understanding how they're going to use it. And I think what's really nice about this AI revolution, and how we have gotten a little bit over the top of that hype curve, and we're starting to kind of plateau a little bit, is people are raising their hand and saying, I want to do AI. One, I need to understand specifically what that means for my business. And then we get into these specific use cases, and we're saying, all right, well, hey, if we build this risk identification model, we're going to be able to lower your loss ratio, and we're going to be able to capture this revenue, and we would have avoided this, adverse selection of this risk here. And we have concrete dollar value that we're assigning to each of these models or use cases we would build. And then we're saying, oh, by the way, we need to manage our data better to be able to build these models. So we're building this really discrete funding model for better data maturity, and we're doing it from the lens of how we're going to affect a business outcome through these different AI or machine learning initiatives. And I think it's a really smart, pragmatic, value-centric way to approach improving your data maturity. So, I fully embrace this kind of this new paradigm and what's happening and the types of conversations we're having with companies these days.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I don't know about you, but it's certainly an interesting space to be in. And I think we're pretty close in our answer, in that I think where I find on average, and again, I stress on average because every client is different for good reasons. Like you say, somebody's threshold may be a 4, as you mentioned earlier, and I think that's fine. It depends on what problem they're trying to solve, which I'll get back to in a second. But I think clients are still trying to go from operational data stores and like traditional warehousing to that self-service analytics. Some are farther along than others, but 80%, and it's no kidding, it's 80% or above are still spending time on wrangling data.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where, in IBM here, we're really focused to make that as easy as possible so you can get onto the business decisions. But you led again right into a question that I've asked before, but I'm asking you again because I find it kind of troubling and not surprising yet interesting that you got to focus on the reason that you're implementing whatever you're implementing. And a lot of times I find the clients I'm dealing with are just, as you say, we've got to get to Hadoop. And I say, why? I mean, okay, I'm good. We can help you get there. We can get you there quick. But what are you going to do when you get there? And it's amazing to me how many don't have that answer. Mm-hmm. I mean, a real use case and business problem. So I guess what I'm asking you is, do you find that? Or do they, by the time they hit Ironside, they've already got the use case? Or do you find that you're trying to round out and push that use case so you can really have a destination and I don't want to say a moonshot, but a North Star by which you can reverse engineer?
Yeah, I would say most oftentimes when we're engaging with our customers, they don't necessarily know what the use cases are. And that's, I think, part of the value we provide in the relationship. Different ways we might be engaging. More often than not, we've actually had more of these lately. Is the board says to the CEO, what are we doing with AI? And CEO says to CIO, what are we doing with AI? And CIO says to the business analytics manager, what are we doing with AI? Or and somebody picks up the phone and calls us and says, what is AI? and what should we be doing? And that really starts a conversation of, okay, well, let's build a roadmap for AI for your organization. Let's understand what this means to you. What are the use cases? Where do you need decision optimization, decision support, automation, if that's the answer in your business? And, it's really kind of marching through their different operational processes and their different business initiatives and identifying and synthesizing what those use cases are. And then on top of that, if you look at it from an industry perspective, there are common use cases in each industry. We would come in and say, well, here are the top 10 problems, if you haven't solved yet, you should be solving. And you would use machine learning to do that or predictive analytics to do that.
Well, the fact that given you have a benchmark, obviously then you're trying to foster that North Star, that vision dialogue, which is very interesting, by the way. I'm going to check out that benchmark. So Greg, here's what I've heard. Look, rallying around strategy, governance, architecture, data, analytics, and skills, your 6 pillars that you focus on. To drive that strategy and that North Star, you've got a proprietary benchmark. That's a survey of sorts that will help you determine where a client is versus where they would long to be. So that helps you at least get a start on their ultimate destination. What you find in terms of everything's a use case, or you need a use case to really make it beneficial. So you've got that destination. And what you find is the most common use cases are some kind of sorting problems, which tend to be purchasing, churn, different things of that nature, where you're using a propensity score to evaluate and predict like a client if they're going to churn or otherwise. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah.
Is there anything? I've got a couple more questions for you, and I like to do a lightning round. I hope you're up for it. But is anything that we left unsaid or something that we didn't get out that you want to make sure that the listeners hear?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything in a lot of detail. So in
Ironside, where can the listeners find more about what you're doing, just yourself as well as Ironside? What's the best place? Is it LinkedIn, or is it Ironside has a site, I'm sure?
Yeah, you can head out to ironsidegroup.com. We're very active on our blog. We've got all of our experts and consultants that are contributing, and they're pulling right from their day-to-day experiences, working with clients, what they're seeing in the trenches. So there's a very real aspect to what you're reading there. So I think that's a great resource. LinkedIn is always great if you want to follow us on there. We're quite active, and that's a great way to stay up to speed on what's new. Both on our blog and events that we're doing and things of that nature.
Fantastic. Well, we at IBM also appreciate your partnership. You're interfaced with the Global Elite program that I run, and so you've been a good partner. So thank you for that, and we'll also put this in the show notes. If you're game, I like to have a little fun and ask you a few questions so people can get to know Greg Bonnette.
Okay.
So, hey, look, the crazier the questions, the more people like it. But I've got some pretty easy ones for you. But
okay.
Just know that. All right. So a few questions, if you don't mind. One is, first off, you talk about the fact that, hey, look, you're the VP of Data and Analytics Strategy at Ironside. And some elements of CDO, CTO, one way or another. What's a day in the life for you look like?
I think the ideal day is interfacing with clients. So I'll say, for example, today I had the great pleasure to sit down and interview the chancellor of a top 50 U.S. Higher education institution. And that's, very common as part of one of our strategy engagements. And those are really rich and enjoyable experiences for me because I get to learn a whole lot about a business or an industry. And I get to bring my skill set to bear to help them solve for those problems. So a lot of client interfacing, a lot of learning on an everyday basis. I think that's a really important thing for me.
How do you learn then? How much time do you spend on learning, would you say? What percentage of your day is spent on learning?
I learn 24/7. Every interaction I have, every person I talk to is an opportunity to learn something, to share something. So, I enter every interaction I have with a client with a very open mind. I don't presume to know the answer. And I think that's really important. Outside of that,
well, what about technology? Yeah, just separate that. I get your point, and that's a very good point. But separate than that, how do you really learn the technology, get up to speed while you're working tactically with all these clients?
A great question. So, just staying up on industry news. I follow a number of different blogs, a number of different websites. Love podcasts, love audio books. I churn through 3 or 4 books a month on Audible while I'm commuting and things and whatnot. So that's a great way for me to kind of keep in touch with research and what's going on out in the space. As it pertains to the complexity of the technology, I do like to get my hands on the dirt every now and then, so I can understand what it's like to work and solve a problem. And for example, a week or 2 ago, I was working with a opioid addiction treatment center, and they wanted to do a quick pilot to understand whether or not an incoming patient was going to kind of progress their treatment and leave in a better state than they came in. And so I had the opportunity to prepare a data set and engineer features based on the requirements and kind of understanding the heuristics of the clinical environment, and put together a quick model that proved that we were able to predict whether or not we were going to have a positive outcome in a given patient situation. And so that was a really fun experience for me. It was, nights and weekends, unfortunately, because the day job gets in the way. But it was really fun for me to do that end to end, to have empathy for what my data science team does and understand complexity or what they do, and also to help me understand how I can help them solve their problems better and help them optimize their processes and have better conversations with our clients. So that's another tactic
nice.
I use. Yep.
That's why we ask these questions. Nice. And you couldn't be a more pressing issue with opioid addiction at this point in time. Jeez.
Right.
And I'm sure you earned a lot of respect getting under the hood. Very, very nice. But what any podcast that you really like outside of this one, of course, but any blogs, any books that you say, hey, you got to go read this book?
Oh man. Yeah, there's so many. One I read recently, I'm going to have to look up the author because I don't have it. Actually, let me look it up right here on my Audible subscription. We're just talking about this the other day. The book is called Nudge by Cass R. Sunstein and Richard Thaler. And just a really great book on a little bit touching on kind of behavioral economics, behavioral design, and choice architecture. And I was fascinated by this, and the book's been out for a while, so I'm sure many of your listeners have probably heard of it. But I think these concepts are going to become more and more important as we're using algorithms to help us make decisions. We're creating the situation where we actually have fewer choices, because the best choice is oftentimes the one the algorithm comes back with. So we have to oftentimes think about maybe how we present results in a way that's going to be more acceptable to somebody that's making a choice. So that was kind of the angle I was coming at in reading the book, and I highly recommend it. I found it very entertaining and very informative about some of those concepts.
What was the name again?
The book is called Nudge.
Nudge.
Yep.
Nice. Okay. Got it. Any podcasts or blogs too that you could recommend?
Yeah. So podcasts, I'm a pretty regular listener to, there's a couple of good data science podcasts out there. One that's really accessible is Linear Digressions. That's kind of a popular data science podcast. I think it's a great way for somebody who's trying to learn data science. They do such a great job of breaking down those complex concepts into ways that we can understand. So highly recommend that one. If you're looking to understand good applications of AI and data science technology, a big fan of the O'Reilly Data Podcast. They do a great job of kind of talking about the industry, the research. So that's another good one to listen into as well.
Perfect. Those are good. That's good advice. All right, I got to ask you a few more questions. I can't let you off that easy.
Okay.
You're answering them too easy. No. All right. So if you woke up tomorrow and you had 2,000 unread emails, you could only answer 300 of them. Which ones do you choose to answer?
Oh, the ones that the ones
So
that
you're
are
using
scored,
AI.
the ones that are scored by the algorithm as the most important. Absolutely, yeah. Got to eat our own dog food
Nice. Good answer. Nice. Very, very. All right. So here's another tough. This is a tougher one. Tell me something that's true that almost nobody agrees with you on.
Oh man, that is a tough one.
Take your time.
I don't know how to answer that.
Okay.
Everybody
agrees with you. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all, actually. But I tend to be persuadable. So I'll come into an argument with a point of view, but I can't be
always
persuaded.
Win.
So yeah, well, I don't win, but I'll capitulate. The better person to ask that question is my wife. So
yeah, I'm sure she could answer it very quickly and repetitively.
Yes, she could probably give 1,000 examples. Yeah.
All right. So with all the hard work you're doing as the VP of strategy, what are you working towards? I mean, what's your goal? I mean, and I'm really talking about your free time. What's important to you?
My goal and objective, my mission that I'm really kind of obsessed with right now is making data science possible for companies that think it's not possible for them. For those that kind of think they're kind of left on the sidelines right now in this revolution because they don't have access to the resources or the skills, and they feel like they may not have a good handle on their data. I've really enjoyed working with companies like that kind of are looking to leapfrog or accelerate their journey, not necessarily take a linear path. And so I'm constantly trying to work on ways where we can bring technology and automation and mentorship and coaching and everything we have to bear to make that possible. So
we share a lot with that objective. That's my objective and my passion as well. If you could interview anybody in the industry, who would it be and why?
Oh man. I really think I would enjoy talking to, and this is super geeky, but Daniel Kahneman.
Yes.
Right. I just was so fascinated with there's a number of books that came out about Kahneman and Tversky. I read his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, right? Yeah. And I was just really fascinated. I think he'd be a really interesting person to have a conversation with. So
what would that is a great, nicely done. At least, it wasn't one of the CEOs that are prevalent today. You went a different route, and thank you for that. What was what is it, Michael Lewis's book?
The Undoing Project. Yeah.
Yes.
Another
that was great.
Yeah. It's just such a wild scenario, just the relationship and everything they did to break ground. And it's so relevant. It's kind of a woke moment to read that book or to read Kahneman's book and really just be self-aware of your own biases. And you can start to proactively change the way you think about scenarios and just be a bit more open to things, catching yourself in those traps. So that's really what's intrigued me. I think that's the foundation for people talk about data literacy, and I think you should start there. In that
This is a great suggestion. I mean, this podcast right there is worth it. I mean, I have read The Undoing Project. I think it's terrific. And one thing, we've got a product here called OpenScale, which detects his bias and explainability. And the reality is if you're doing anything with AI, as far as I'm concerned, you've got to have solutioning around bias. And those books that we describe right there, that you just don't even know the bias that's inherent to us all, if everybody would just read those books, I think they'd come back and I wouldn't even have to sell OpenScale. It would just sell itself.
Oh, absolutely.
At that point in time.
Yep.
I mean, now you got me excited, and I'll keep this quick, but one of the stories that I really liked was a story in the 1970s that they went through in the Undoing Project, where they talked about, they brought, and I may have told this before, I certainly pitch it in some of my presentations because I think it's terrific, where they got, I think it was the Oregon Research Institute, got a bunch of doctors together and said, we want you to identify stomach cancers. And, like shapes, different attributes. I think they had 7 attributes: size, shape, crater, color, that kind of thing. And this was in the 70s, mind you. And then they created a model. They said, well, we're going to model it, see if we can get it, we can predict it via a model. before we had all the reduction in price with compute and storage that made it all easier for us to do this stuff today. But anyway, they were creating, this model. And then they brought I'm probably preaching to the choir. I don't know if you remember the story. But then they brought the doctors back together, and then they gave them 100 pictures. And what they didn't tell them is they put some of the same pictures in of these stomachs. And they went in there to identify them, see if they could beat the model. Anyway, they do all this, they rated the models on those 7 attributes that they came up with. They sent it to UCLA, who did an assessment. They sent it back, and the results were unsettling. And that was that not only did the doctors not agree with their peers, they didn't agree with themselves. And the model beat them. And I thought, think about that kind of impact. That was in the 70s before we had the compute power that we have today, and think of what we can do that today if we use that. But I thought it was a great example.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal anecdote from that book. Absolutely. Yeah.
But they got a ton. So look, one more question, and then I will let you go back to your regularly scheduled life, your day in the life. What's next for you?
Oh, what's next? That's a great question. I think, big for me in Ironside is really continuing to grow our data science practice. I think that's really the, at the forefront for us. That's a core to strategy. We think that that's how we're going to achieve our mission of achieving business outcomes for our clients, solving business problems. So it's really doubling down there, continuing to kind of grow our team, onboard new technological skills there, and drive to results for our customers. So that's really what I'm focused on.
Well, thank you, Greg, so much for being on. We got a lot of information from your industry expertise. So we appreciate it. And look, we'll continue to partner from an IBM perspective, but I'd also like to personally partner with you. And again, I can't thank you enough for being here.
Thanks so much, Al, for having me. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much. Until next time, guys, be good. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for listening to the Making Data Simple podcast, where we make data fun. Be sure to visit ibmbigdatahub.com/podcast to access the show notes and uncover even more great episodes. Remember, the views expressed here are those of the host and its guests, and do not necessarily represent the views of IBM. Until next time, over and out.